correct me if I'm wrong here, but your bail was something like $750,000 initially, right?
Initially, yeah.
And your family all got together and raised, mortgaged a home, and a relative of yours who was a retired policeman came and spoke on your behalf at a bail hearing to try to get that reduced so that potentially you could get out and get back on the street again until you await trial, I suppose. And that backfired, right?
The bail was doubled to $1.5 million cash only, and I was reallocated from medium security to maximum security. Now, I'd seen the cockroaches here and there, but I got to my cell in max security at about 2 in the morning. And there's a bit of light slanting in from the day room. I notice it's only a 2-man cell. There's 2 bunks at the back of the wall. Go in, and I'm wondering why my cellmate's asleep on the top bunk. Because where I come from, people fight over the bottom bunk, thinking something's not quite right. Walking a little bit around in the cell, something drops off the ceiling and bounces off my shoulder. Like, what was that? Looking at the walls and the ceiling, there's like a swirl effect. And I'm thinking, all right, my eyes are playing tricks. So I put my face right up to the wall, and it's just absolutely covered in American cockroaches. Nothing like I'd ever seen before in my life. So I'm thinking, all right, how's he asleep up there? He's wrapped a sheet around him. So 8 at night is locked down, 10 lights out. The roaches know when the lights are about to go out. They start lining up in the cracks in the wall in this old building, doing this little movement with their antennae sticking out, like an army waiting to invade. So as soon as the lights go out, they just flood the room. You've got a choice: wrap the sheet around you, look like the mummy, leave a breathing hole. It does keep them off you. But this is the Sonoran Desert. It's almost 50 degrees UK temperature, 120 US temperature in the summer. And there's a vent at the back of the cell attached to what's called a swamp cooler. The only time that air was blowing was when the county health inspector walked through the building, and as soon as he left, it went back to the broken setting. And what I mean is, we would ask the guards why it's working and just say, oh, it's broken. So wrap the sheet around me, and I've already got all these bleeding, skin infections, and bed sores from the heat. And when you wrap that sheet around you, you just start sweating so much, and you're itchy. Your skin has turned soggy because you're sweating every single day. You scratch yourself, clumps of your own skin detach under your nails. So in the end, I just throw the sheet off and let the cockroaches crawl on me.
So you were just slowly decomposing every night.
Yeah, rotting away. It looked like I spilt battery acid on my leg at one point. I had this just big infection on my leg. Because I'm sat on my arse a lot, I'm getting all these bed sores on my butt. And I put a tank order in, a medical request to see this doctor, and he tells me to drop my drawers, and he's going to check my arse out. And then he just goes to grab my dick, and I pull back. I'm like, whoa, there's nothing wrong with my dick.
Not yet.
Sorry. I'm just seeing if you can get hard. I'm just seeing if you can get hard. I'm just seeing if you can come. I'm just seeing if you can come. Yes.
When I got back to the medical waiting room, every other prisoner said he tried to grab their dicks as well. But back to the roach story.
Yeah.
So sheet around you, it is way too hot and itchy. So you just throw the sheet off, let them crawl on you. Now, they don't bite. They tickle your feet, tickle your legs. I woke up so many nights from tickling my hands. I flinch now if someone tickles my hands. But they get on your face, mouth, nose. The favorite place of all is going in your ears to eat your earwax. It's like honey to them.
Oh.
Literally, I had a little piece of towel and I washed my ear. I washed the earwax out my ear one time with this little piece of towel and I hung it near the sink. And the cockroaches, they crawled on the little piece of towel and they were pulsing right on where the earwax was. Like, honey, this is our honey. Feed me.
That's brilliant. The sacrificial towel.
I had a neighbor.
They knew where it came from.
I had a neighbor who was asthmatic. Wakes up one morning, out of breath, grabs his inhaler, takes a blast, shoots a live cockroach inside himself, starts freaking out, saying he can feel it moving around. He froze up his stomach contents, and somehow it's stuck inside him, and it won't even come out. even in the daytime, there were so many prisoners were doing cockroach races on the day room tables, gambling on who would be the winner. Now, over time, you've got to just harmonize with your environment. And I was living with the cockroaches in that maximum security Madison Street jail for about a year. So in the end, I'm just chilling with them, watching their habits. They communicate through these chemical smells. If you threaten them, then like these warrior ones come running under your door, like, what's up over here. Some of them have little pouches of babies. It looks like a section of a worm. And if they manage to get that under your bunk, and I would find them like attached to books and stuff, all the babies hatch and they go absolutely everywhere.
Not the
But
babies.
they will, yeah, all the little baby cockroaches, they're just all over the wall, just swirling and swirling, swirling. There was white ones. I don't know whether they were albinos or they were shedding their skin. People say they would survive a nuclear attack, and I agree. If you throw them in the toilet, they look like they're drowned. They're like this, but the little bastards are actually holding oxygen to themselves. And then I saw people just smash them and like completely flat. I'm reading my book. Look over an hour later, and the fingers reformed. And it's just gone on to have a nice day. So
there was no concern at all. Obviously, there was no concern. So the prison themselves were like, all right, it's fine for every single inmate to just live in a sea of cockroaches. And that's just the way they live. And I'm sure that also made everybody a little on edge. Sleep's not great. And so probably made it more violent, more shitty, just a circular, pattern there, right?
Absolutely. The violence was nonstop. It's all racial gangs. So I'm white. I go in. Skinheads from the Aryan Brotherhood come up to me like, hey, we want a word with you. Get in that cell over there. You can't say no to these guys. They're just going to smash your head into the wall. So go into the cell. They close the door behind me, so it's almost closed. Biggest one gets in my face. He's like, what are your charges? I'm new to this. My charges are on a computer printout. Legal terminology. I don't know what it means. So I give the worst answer in the world. I say, I don't know what my charges mean. Now they've got me against the wall about to attack me. What do you mean you don't know what your charges mean? Are you a chomo? Are you a chomo? I don't even know what a chomo is at this point.
You learn fast.
So that's child molester, and that is KOS, which means kill on sight.
Yeah.
So in the end, I pulled out my charge sheet. They saw I was in for drugs. They saw I had big charges. I had a big bail bond, conspiracy, $750,000 cash only. They were like, God damn, you guys the mafia? Who guys were you killing or what? I was like, no, raves, ecstasy, we didn't kill anybody. And then they explain all the rules. It's like, if someone calls you a punk or a bitch or hits you, you have to fight them on the spot or else the whole gang will attack you. You must take showers or they'll smash you for bad hygiene. Can't go making friends with the guards, they'll smash you for snitching. Can't sit at the tables with other races, they'll smash you for that. So they're constantly looking for people to beat up because that's how they earn their reputations and tattoos. To rise up in the gang, you've got to commit increasing acts of violence. To be fully patched into the AB, you've got to kill someone for them in the jail. So there's 4 gangs. There's the white gang is the AB, Aryan Brotherhood. Then you've got the Mau Mau is the black gang. Then you've got the Chicanos, and then you've got the Paisas. You've got the old Mexican mafia. So it's just constant gang warfare in there, and it's all about the drugs. The absolute priority of the gang is getting the drugs in. Approximately 90% of the prisoners were injecting heroin, injecting crystal meth. The whole day just revolved around getting the drugs in. And that's why these jails now have created the ideal target market for gang members to sell drugs to because they can't get out of jail. And they've even got the guards bringing the drugs in for them to sell to them. And most of these people were arrested for crimes related to drugs. Young people came in back then. The biggest arrest category was weed possession. And then they leave addicted to heroin. They've got neo-Nazi tattoos. They've made their criminal connections in prison. They've got a criminal record. They can't get a job. And by the time they get out, they're converted into full-on criminals. Everybody I saw who got released just came right back. It's really sad. But that's how the prisons stay in business. It's $50,000 a year of taxpayers' money per prisoner as soon as they come back.
I'd written down, does that cruelty prevent repeat offenders? I wanted the answer to that, because it would make me not want to go back again. But I guess I just
It makes me not want to go.
Right? But it sounds like it creates better criminals or bigger criminals.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, there's the deterrent factor, but Arizona prides itself on that. It says we've got the toughest prisons. If you look at FBI stats, Arizona's got some of the highest reoffending in the whole of the country. So it's to do with the war on drugs. If you mass incarcerate low-level drug users, which is what most prisoners are, in the TV you see prisoners are like Pablo Escobar, Hannibal Lecter. That's all the media reports is extreme crimes on one side and how easy they got it on the other. They got PlayStations, they got gourmet food, they got luxuries. And this is how the media tricks the public into hating on prisoners. But when you get in there, the average arrest I saw was a black kid or a Mexican kid with a little bit of weed getting like a 2 to 5 year sentence. I had a cellmate who got caught with a roach. He got a 18-month sentence. I was there when a Vietnam vet got sentenced. A black guy, he'd been shot in the head by a sniper. He'd won Purple Heart Medal for bravery. Prosecutor said he's unemployed. He's got a nice new car. There was some crumbs of cocaine on the car. He must be a dealer. And judge was like, bam, sent him away for almost 10 years like that. So it's a prison industrial complex that preys on the poorest sections of society. One cop said, I just go into a black neighborhood and make my arrest quota. It's like shooting fish in a barrel.
Sure. I want to circle all the way back around to that bail hearing, because that had to be one of those moments where you're like just on the cusp of victory, and victory is snatched away, and you fall into the jaws of defeat because you were in minimum security, which wasn't fun, but not the worst scenario ever.
I was in medium.
Oh, medium. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then because of the way that bail hearing went down and them doubling your bail essentially, because you went over a $1 million bail, you're automatically upgraded to maximum security. And that's when you got sent to the Roach Motel.
Yeah, and I've been in Towers Jail for a year. I know all the slang. I know the prison walk. So the next day when I woke up in max security, I've got to go to the white table now, the woods, and they're going to determine now whether they're going to accept me or they're going to smash me. This is max security. They're nearly all in there for murder. There was a few crystal meth chemists. So I walk up to the table, doing the prison walk with all the slang. Like, what up, Wood? What up, Wood? Where did you roll in from, Wood?
Ahoy, hoy.
Towers Jail. They made my bail bond over $1 million, so I got reclassed to max. They're like, what are you in for, Wood? Ecstasy. So they're asking me all these questions, and I'm thinking, I'm fitting in with these guys. They're going to accept me. Then I go back to my room, and hours later, the head of the gang, he comes down with all of his legal paperwork, and he says, I want you to read this for me and tell you if this plea bargain they're offering me is reasonable. So they saw through my act and saw I was an educated person, and I was a resource to them.
That's really funny.
They could tell I knew how to read, so now I'm the professor.
British guy.
A third of the prisoners could not read or write. In max security, I set up a class for the Mexicans, teaching them how to write home in Spanish, because a lot of them worked out in the countryside and they couldn't read and write. Then the Aryan Brotherhood put a green light to have me smashed for helping another race. I had an independent tough guy who was my cellmate at the time, Joe, and he intervened with the gang and they allowed me to keep helping the Mexicans.
Sean, can you move your mic closer?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That sounds so.
That's awful.
That sounds fucking horrible. But something I want to So you got there, the Aryans approach you in your cell, and then kind of how does that relationship go from there? Like you said, there's no turning them down. You have to kind of play the game. Were there ever times where it was like, hey, you just earned your first swastika tattoo. Come on in. And you're like, no, actually, guys get they also used an eagle. Let's do a real generic eagle. Can you make it look like the Philadelphia Eagles?
I saw one skinhead. He had a tattoo of Hitler on his chest.
No subtlety.
Zeke Heiling over a gas chamber with Jewish people dying inside the gas chamber. Yeah. Now here's what helped me out.
Intricate.
Here's what helped me
Hey,
out.
Sean, can you move your mic a lot closer?
Yeah. Is it going to go over the screen now? Is that okay?
Oh,
Let's
so
go
much
over the
better.
face.
My God. Yeah.
got it.
A fist
All right,
is a
so-
good. Yeah.
Over 100 people arrested with me, including some of my bouncers from the raves I was throwing, including my best friend from my hometown, who is a massive guy. He co-interviews people with me on my YouTube channel called Wildman. He's like the UK Joey Diaz.
Oh, I've seen that guy. Yes. He is the UK Joey Diaz.
His fists are twice the size of mine, and they're just all human teeth marks all over them. He's a good guy to get arrested with. So once the AB guys in Towers Jail found out I was with Wildman and that we were at one of the biggest crews in the jail, we had a coexistence with them, and none of our clique got smashed.
Jesus Christ.
In that first year, that was when we were all together.
I think
What was your relation to the guy with the Hitler tattoo? Was he just like, oh no, that's Alan? I think there's some other guy who's like, even Alan goes a little far for us. I mean, Hitler chose a perfectly fine signet for us to use, and he goes for the whole portrait thing. None of us are on board with that. Don't think we're all like.
Let's put it this way: when the head of the whites got moved out of our building, and there was a white boy meeting, and we had to vote on the new head of the whites, I didn't vote for that skinhead. I vote for Marco, who was out of the Italian mafia. The Italian mafia took over from the Aryan Brotherhood in that pod, and it was the best we ever had it. Like, these guys were running the show. Outside the jail at night, when we were all locked down, when we were all supposed to be asleep, Marco was outside the jail with the guards, smoking and giving them orders. Whenever we got raided, he would find out in advance, and anything the guards took, all our bedding and everything, would get all fresh stuff from other guards, would bring it right back to us. He had a legal visit from his girlfriend. In legal visits, the guards can't watch, so his girlfriend would come in as a legal visitor and give him blowjobs in the legal visitation room.
Nice.
And there was like the least violence ever under Marco's rule. I wrote a whole chapter about it in Hard Time, and it was the best of the time in Towers Jail was when the Italian mafia were running the show. But the good times never last.
What was the like meshing between the Italians and the Aryans? What was that like? An alliance because they're both white, or like their own interests? Like, I'm sure they had their own drug interests and stuff, right?
There was an uneasy coexistence that culminated into a full-scale semi-riot at one point, and which ended up with us all getting moved. So the Italians, when people have got it good like that and they're running things, other people get jealous because people have got nothing in prison. Mm-hmm. So the Woods were getting jealous of, how smoothly they were running things and all the perks they were getting. And they were always scheming, and they always had the greater numbers. We had more numbers temporarily, but in the end, Marco got moved. He got sentenced. His next in line took over. He was a Golden Gloves boxer, and he had a lot of fights in a row, and he always won. And then he fought a Rule 11 inmate called Buster Beats. Now, that means a mentally ill person, Rule 11. There was this foul meal that nobody would eat called Red Death, and this guy would just put it in plastic bags and eat it all day long. And he was my cellmate briefly as well. He took the legs off crickets and mosquitoes and beat them with little rolled up pieces of toilet paper.
I didn't know where I was going. And they were in some sort of a Pickle Rick type scenario, but he would just pull the legs off until it's a torso, and then he would beat them with a rolled up.
Yeah, and say, "Good mosquito, you're not going to leave me now." Things like this.
Oh shit!
He had this rap called "Dead Body Hose" about having sex with the corpses of Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera and all this stuff, and the prisoners would always make him do it. But anyway, the Golden Gloves boxer, Nick, he ended up in a fight with Buster Beats. Buster Beats, these Rule 11 guys, they've got this crazy strength. And Buster Beats, he kept like, Marco, the Golden Gloves guy, Nick, just kept beating the shit out of Buster Beats. And he'd say, like, I give up. He'd go to leave the cell. Buster Beats would like jump back up, bounce off the wall like Spider-Man, jump on Nick's back. And this went on for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and Nick's like just punch. He's got him up against the wall, just punch. I think he's gonna kill this guy. And Nick, his hand, he broke his knuckle. His hand swelled up like the size of a grapefruit. Pieces of teeth of both of them had come off. And after that, Nick said, "Look, I'm sick of being the head of the whites." He was sick of fighting all the time.
And he was disillusioned from being the retarded man. He was like, I don't even know what this is all about anymore.
The sad thing was, my people on the outside and Nick's people on the outside, we were trying to help him. We were trying to locate his step parents to try and get him some assistance. So.
Oh yeah, they want him back.
He starts a different gang, and he's like, "I know you're not a chomo, but are you a chromo?" And then they start gathering up his own Rule 11 gang. So I assume that Buster was not invited to any of the gangs. They're like, "I know you're white, Buster, but you can't."
No, he was Chicano. He was Chicano.
Oh, Chicano. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
that sounds kind of funny.
As awful as all of this sounds, I think the worst thing I heard you talk about, the roaches sound horrific, and like I think the roaches would severely damage my mental health over the course of days and weeks and months. But the spider situation, could you speak on that a little bit?
So you would just wake up with pinpricks on your skin. It would get you in the night because it would come out looking for food. You roll around in your sleep and you touch it. Then in the following days, the pus would start to come out and the skin would like melt away and the venom would eat into your flesh down to the bone on some occasions and cause what's called a volcano lesion. Now, we'd take these guys to the guards and the guards would always say the same thing in the early stages, at least. It's the policy of the jail not to treat insect bites. You put yourself in here, you deal with it. So this Chicano gang member who was facing like hundreds of years, he'd been in a drive-by shooting. He shot a bunch of teenagers. He was a teenager when this had happened. And one bullet had gone through a girl and come out and blew her nipple off. And it was headline news every night whether these people in critical injury were going to die because he was going to get the death penalty then. So he got bit on his back. I mean, this guy was like 300 plus pounds and he would roll around in his sleep on this little bunk. Obviously, his body would go against the wall and that's how he got the spider bite. So we're showing it to the guards every day because it's like a baseball of yellow pus plasma is like building up in his back. And the guards are like, it's the policy of the jail not to treat insect bites. You put yourself in here.
It's an arachnid, sir. An arachnid.
So we did try to deal with it. We got a load of guys in the day room, big guys, and we got his arms on either side and held him steady. There was a Russian guy, Bill, in the military, and he said he knew how to dress wounds. So he was our designated doctor. I was holding a roll of toilet paper, and the Russian just comes up behind him and starts massaging this wound. All this pus is running down his back. And I'm helping mop it up with the toilet paper. Now, this is going on for about 10, 20 minutes. Big guy's almost fainting. Sweat dripping off his ears, his chin. He starts dragging everybody across the day room. We need more guys to hold him. People were jumping on. When all of the pus was finally out, what we did for him was what the Russians said was the best thing to stop the bacteria. Put salt on the wound to stop the bacteria.
A little lemon juice, maybe.
Now, when I got moved over to Max Security, I started a little competition called Sufferer of the Week. Whoever had it the worst, the prisoners who had commissary would put in like a Snickers bar or some peanut butter, and whoever had it worst that week would win. So there was one guy, he got bitten on his thumb by the spider. So every day he's showing it to the guards, and the guards are like, tough shit, you got nothing coming. And in the beginning, it was just the pus coming out. It was red. Then it went purple. Then it went blue. Then mold started to grow on it, and it turned black. And they finally took him to see a doctor, and they had to cut it off before it impacted his whole body. And of course, we awarded him Sufferer of the Week, and he says it was worth losing his fun for just to get the extra food.
Jeez.
But he got
So
a
you had,
Snickers
like, a nice
bar,
little,
so it was kind of
you
a
know,
win.
Yeah.
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 Could someone help me unwrap it though, for real?
Yeah, it's kind of like maximum security prison meets free parking from Monopoly. Like you get a little
That's
bit of benefit.
yeah, that's the
Play the
brown.
system.
That's the brown recluse spider that does that, and I've never seen one. I think that's kind of part of their MO is that you don't see them very often. They're very small spiders. The worst story I heard is about the guy who sat on a toilet seat and there was one under the rim and it bit him on the head of his dick, and his dick rotted off because he was embarrassed to go to a doctor and say, "Look at my penis, it's been bitten by something." He just thought, it'll get better, but those bites really don't get better. They get much worse before they get any better.
I tell the doctor immediately.
Well,
Every time you get bit in the penis?
Every single time.
These stories so far are mild compared to my dick, balls, and gang rape and beheading stories.
Yes, and I got all that written down. So all that written down to address. So like you mentioned it and we moved past it real quickly, but I was curious. So you said, and it was on one of your videos, what do you do if some powerful guy, the Hitler, portrait guy, green lights you to get your shit pushed in and beat the fuck up? If that gets greenlit, is there any way to go to that guy and be like, "Hey, I'm so sorry, let me give you some Snickers," or is it like, no, once that's okayed, you're fucked. He can't go back on it or he'll look weak or complacent? Like, how's that pan out?
Prison rape is so common, there's a rape class now that you have to attend under PREA, Prison Rape Elimination Act.
Yep.
It's mandatory.
A rape class. Did you learn anything? Are you better at raping now than before?
So prisoners are joking on the way to the rape class.
I went to the rape class myself.
So you watch a video, and there's some guys in the day room, some predators. The young prisoners coming in are hungry. If they take food, they're in debt. And once they got you in debt, they got you. They say, "Look, you got to pay this debt or else we're going to kill you." "Well, I got no money." "Well, you're going to go in that cell over there, do whatever he says, and that will pay your debt off." And if you are weak-minded enough to do that, there's no turning back. That's called getting turned out, becoming a prison punk. They rent you out as a prison prostitute, and you're ruined. At the lowest level in the prison is punks, snitches, and chomos. So the conclusion of the rape class was, to stop rape, you have to report it. If you report anything, you're a snitch. So after we went to the rape class, a young mentally ill prisoner was gang raped, and nobody reported a single thing.
Oh no! Yeah. Like, he gets raped in the rape class.
after the class. Yeah,
right after, yeah.
So, Sean, I've thought about this a lot. What's the strategy for a non-tough guy in prison, right? Like, you're not 6'6" debt collector. How do you thrive in this environment?
Make sure you get arrested with wild man and over 100 people who are your bouncers from the rave scene. Because if I'd have gone in there on my own, I'm not a big tough guy. I'm just a nerdy business graduate. It's raw survival of the fittest. I would have been annihilated by those gang members. But once they saw there was a pack of us, they're like, everyone who's coming into the jail, it's like animalistic. And they're looking for the weakest in the herd to slaughter. Mm. So, if you're in there with your bouncers, and you're clicking up with the Italian mafia, and Wildman was behaving like a maniac in there, and showing people how crazy and dangerous he was. People are not going to go towards that. They're going to go towards less dangerous situations to threaten people and bully people and try and extort people and get money and commissary out of them. Now, my co-defendants were only around me for the first year because the prosecutor wanted me and Wildman to be separate. She wanted me to be separate from my co-defendants. By doubling my bail, she got me away from them. So I didn't know anybody in max security. She said that we were influencing the co-defendants not to break down and snitch. Sammy the Bull, who was my competitor, 57 people got arrested with him. They all agreed to cooperate. In my case, over 100 got arrested and only 4 agreed to cooperate. Everybody hung tight, and that's because we were so close-knit. So the prosecutor was concerned that I was influencing the co-defendants. So I got moved up to higher and higher security levels away from them.
Can you age out of the game? Like at some point you must be able to. If you're 79 years old, they don't expect you to be an enforcer of any kind, right?
There's guys in there who've earned their stripes. There was a guy who saved my life at one point called Two Tonys. He was a multiple homicide murderer. He was doing 141 years. He'd left the dead bodies of rival gangsters from Arizona to Alaska. He worked for the Bonanno crime family under Joe Bonanno Sr., who was the longest running head of the Mafia Council, who never got whacked. He ended up living in the same neighborhood as me, Sin Vacas, in the Catalina Mountains in Tucson, Arizona, most beautiful place I've ever lived in my life. And Two Tonys, he took me under his wing. I had a situation when I got moved over to a prison where I didn't know anybody, and Two Tonys found out and helped me out. So I get to this new cell, don't know anybody. My cellmate is a serial home invader, torturer. He's breaking into people's houses, mostly drug dealers, tying up with duct tape and taking ball-peen hammers to their kneecaps. That was his favorite method of torture. So I show up in his cell, and he says to me, I put my property down on my bunk, and he had some artwork up there. And he's like, you need to be more aware of your fucking surroundings. And he starts threatening me, saying I could smash your brains in while you sleep. I've got a padlock in the sock. And he didn't like me from the get-go. He was an old con. He just wanted to run his illegal tattoo shop and do his heroin and everything in there. He didn't want me in there. So he schemed to get rid of me. Now, he had a mate, a big guy, 20 plus stone, which is 240 pounds. And they timed it. Prison is like high school mentality with deadly consequences. They knew my parents were flying 5,000 miles to visit me for Christmas. So they timed it. This big guy attacked me just as I'm walking down this corridor to visit my parents. So he sneaks up behind me. He's like, bam, bam. Chicken shit move, didn't get in my face, comes up behind me, kidney punching. And, I'm not skilled in the arts of fighting at that point. So I turn around, start throwing some kicks and punches. You got no choice. The prison's looking at you. If you don't hit back, you're a punk. Everyone's got to prey on you. I'm throwing some kicks and punches, and I end up getting beat down on the floor. Didn't work out well for me. Fortunately, a staff member came, and it ended. My mom sees me at visitation. I'm all injured. She asks what's wrong. I can't say, she's already had a nervous breakdown on my situation. I did manage to get moved out of that cell. And my new cellmate, Long Island, he come from a prison where his neighbor said to him, look, I did business with this guy on the streets called English Sean. He's a good dude. If you run into him, look out for him. Now, bear in mind, there's 60,000 people in the Arizona Department of Corrections at that time. So it's weird how people came out of the blue to help me. People came out of the blue to harm me. So Long Island goes, look, I've got a friend, Two Tonys. You want to play a game of chess with him? He knew if Two Tonys liked me, he would take me under his wing. He didn't tell me that. He was a bit more slick. I said, yeah, fine. What's he in for? Oh, he's old school mafia, multiple homicide murder, 141 years. I'm like, whoa, hold on a minute. You want me to play chess against this guy? If I win, I might be next on his list. He just goes and gets him, and he comes down the stairs like Uncle Junior. He's already served 20. He's already served 20 plus years. I'm stood in the day room over the chessboard, nervous, sweating. He sees that. He puts me at ease in a fake British accent. He's like, "Have you have bloody tea and crumpets with the Beatles?" And joking around, clowning around. I beat him at chess, and at the end of the game, he says, "Look, how come you beat me so fast?" I said, "You kept speaking your mind all through the game. You wouldn't show someone your hand in a game of cards, would you?" And he slaps his head. He goes, "Oh, me and my big mouth." I didn't know it. He was testing me. He said, "Look, Sean, to stay alive on the road of life, I've had to become a quick judge of character. I like you. I think you're an honest guy. Would you be willing to write my life story?" I said, "Yeah, I would be honored." So I wasn't supposed to be going in his cell, but he had prisoners outside watching for guards. For months on end, I'm going in his cell. He's telling me his life story. Absolutely fascinating stuff. So the lieutenant in the Bonanno crime family who Two Tonys came up under was Charlie Battaglia, who'd whacked people from coast to coast, got away with it, and was an expert in getting rid of the bodies. So Two Tonys is telling me all these techniques about disposing of corpses. For example, you get a hole dug really deep, get the corpse in there, put some dirt over it, and then put a dead animal, a few feet above it. So if the cadaver dogs come out, they hit on the animal and then they stop digging. But the way the Bonanno crime family solved that was they had double-decker coffins. So they'd have a genuine person whose funeral it was, someone they'd whacked would also go in the double-decker coffin, and they'd either get buried or that's how they got rid of the corpses. So yeah, I wrote Two Tony's book. It's called The Mafia Philosopher, Two Tonys, but sadly he died in 2010 from his liver cancer from his own drug taking, as a lot of people do in prison, because hepatitis C is just absolutely rife. A lot of the guys are sharing dirty needles and stuff like that. So Two Tonys, there was a situation with a shot caller whereby I'd written about prisoners were buying items from the inmate store and they were making their own syringes out of these items. And I put that online, and then the shot caller said, that's tantamount just to putting our secrets out there, put out a green light to have me smashed or killed. And like for 2 or 3 days, the whole yard was in uproar because the fellas were liking me. I was doing this blog called John's Jail Journal. My writing was got online. My parents would type it up. My aunt would type it up, put it online from my letters that I was sending home. And the prisoners were getting followings. Like people were sending them letters and pen pals and books. We were filling the whole library up with books. We had like a real Shawshank Redemption moment where like 54 books came in 1 week. So half the yard was supporting me, saying I was doing a good thing, and half the yard were like trying to attack me. Anyway, Two Tonys called in a favor, and after 2 or 3 days of craziness, people trying to get in my cell, other people protecting me, after 2 or 3 days of craziness, it all just died down. So potentially could have saved my life, yeah. But that's what it's like, and anything could happen at any moment.
You mentioned you got into a fight and it didn't go well. Is it okay to lose?
Yeah,
is there an honor?
Absolutely. The honor is not walking away. The honor is showing heart. So when you go into prison, into jail, in remand, the first thing they want to know anywhere, your charges, that's a charge check. And they'll also do what's called a heart check. So they'll send someone to you and they'll probe you, find out about you. And then that person might like try to intimidate and bully you just to see how far they can go with it, to see if you're a weakie or if you're showing heart.
Huh. So what's the correct, I imagine that's a tightrope, right? Like if let's say you weren't on Two Tonys' good side and he sends some, big Italian lug into your cell. How do you walk that line of, not being outright aggressive towards him when he starts threatening you, but also not looking like a bitch? Because I'm sure you go too hard at him, he'll be like, yeah, this guy's a fucking problem. Let's whack him, or whatever the hell it would be.
So when I was living with the serial home invader torturer who got his friend to attack me, before his friend attacked me, I sensed that was brewing, and they would come in the cell and talk shit to me, and I thought it was going to go off in the cell. And I'm thinking in my head now, if these guys are just going to punk me, that's it. It's over for me. The rest of my life in prison, I am just screwed. So I had like my pens right next to me, and I was just going to go stick a pen in one of their eyeballs. I would just have to I would have to have made an example. Otherwise, I would have been raped, attacked, extorted, everything. So it's that tense all the time, and I could barely even sleep. I'm not a violent person. I'm thinking there's 3 guys in here, big guys. They could just fucking take me down and rape me or anything. If I stick a pen in one of the eyeballs, if they try to rape me, I'm just going to straight shit in my hand and fucking just rub it all over them, rub it in their faces. These are the levels of demented behavior that these environments force you to think about what you're going to have to do, because you're going to have to retaliate full on if they do something to you. Otherwise, you're a punk.
My next question. Is it okay to win, right? Let's say you're in a fight with some guy and you win 1 out of 10 tries, right? Like, your odds and you think you've got a 10% chance of winning, but it's your lucky day. Now what? You know the score. That guy knows the score. Does he get rematches until you're properly punished for winning a fight? Is it okay to win?
It depends on the level of the beef. So most beefs are squashed with a one-on-one fight. The gangs do not want people jumping in on either side, whether it's within a race or outside of a race. Got a bunch of whites jumping in, a bunch of blacks jumping in. You got a race riot, jail gets locked down. No one comes out of their cells for 3 days plus. The drug business stops. The absolute priority is to keep the drug business running at all times. If 2 prisoners have got a beef, then the leaders of the gangs will say, right, that cell under the stairs. You guys go in there and squash the beef, and you'll see it happen. You know, you can watch it from around the day room and stuff. These guys will fight it out, and at the end, they're having a hug and having a smoke together. Now, there are beefs that can escalate into life and death stuff. There's feuds on the streets that carry over into prison, and there's guys that will just go and pick up a shank and come back and try and kill you. So you've got to be very wary that, you know, who you're dealing with. And as long as it's at that low level, harmony is restored after the beef is squashed.
When they take two people in the cell under the stairs and say, work it out, do they ever talk it out? Like, oh, I didn't say Chomo, I said Chromo. I thought you had Down syndrome. And they all laugh it off and move on. Do they ever talk it out?
You know what? Tony said he has used humor to diffuse many a potentially violent situation. But talking it out is more on the female side. In the men's side, they're fast to the fists. You see a guy, he'll be walking down a corridor, he'll look at a guy say, what are you looking at? He'll say nothing. You calling me nothing. Bam, bam, bam. It's on just like that. It's like a powder keg of stress, especially for the guys who are unsentenced. So being unsentenced is more stressful because you don't know what's going to happen to you, and you're looking to take that stress out on somebody.
I asked you what the strategy was, right? For a guy who's not, you know, Herculean. It sounds like losing is it. Like if I go in there, I can't beat up these guys. Just go in, show heart. I hope they accept that. It sounds
the toughest guys have the highest mortality. Look at Nick. You know, he was proud of winning all these fights. The more fights you win, the more challenges you get. Everybody wants to make their name off the toughest guy in the building. So eventually you're going to come a cropper. My strategy was, I've done prison survival advice videos, and one of them is titled Make Alliances with the Right People. I had Wildman going in. I had two Tonys later on.
Okay. Why did that guy torture? You mentioned it was mostly drug dealers, but it wasn't all drug dealers. It sounded like he had a method or like a motive.
Oh, he loved it. He loved it. So he was.
I guess everyone needs a hobby. Okay.
He was going to court one day, and he was in a holding cell, and there was a suspected Chomo. So he held a kangaroo court with him as the judge, and it was decided to stab the Chomo, tie him up and stab him, which he did. And then he put a knife into the eyeball of the Chomo. He didn't gouge his eye out. He just put it to the eyeball of the Chomo like he was going to take the eyeball out. And he told everybody in there, if any of you snitch on what I've done, I will find you, or someone in the prison system will find you. We'll fucking take your eyeballs out. We'll fucking eat them.
Jesus. So that was just kind of his. Some people like to read. Some people like TV shows. Some people like exercise, and he liked breaking people's knees with ball peen hammers and threatening to gouge your eye out.
Oh, yeah. And the day he got arrested, it was headline news. They had like a tank on the street, and they had like helicopters over the house. And in the end, it looked like he was going to go down in a shootout. But in the end, one of his female friends came forward and helped the negotiator get him out. He was full on hardcore.
Were the different gangs, like you said, like it's all about business at the end of the day. They want to keep making their money. They want to keep getting their drugs. But was there almost like a hierarchy, like among the non-gang related prisoners, where it's like, oh, okay, thank goodness the Italians took power from the Aryans. You know, they all suck, but at least the Aryans, you know, they were way more brutal. Or the Hispanic gang's in charge right now. I really hope that the black or whatever gang takes power because they're being so brutal. Or was it all like mutually assured destruction? The Hispanics cut a guy's head off, and so then the Italians and the Aryans do it, and then the blacks have to show they have to do it too. Like just constantly one-upping each other. Or what was that dynamic?
Okay, the reason that everybody's prison stories are different. Some people will call other people out and say, it's not like that. That rule isn't right. People don't behave like that. Well, the reason that everybody's prison stories are different is because every prison yard has different prisoners, different guards. There's different rules depending upon who the leader is. For example, I was in one building where every night there was like a fellatio show. There was a white guy getting a blowjob from a trans prisoner in the building opposite, and we'd all watch it and just do this like running commentary of jokes, which was a funny thing. But when that head of the whites got moved out of the building and a new head of the whites came in, they sent word to the opposite building saying that white guy getting the blowjob was going to get attacked the very next day unless it stopped immediately. So it depends upon the characters who are in charge, and that's constantly changing.
That makes sense.
So I watch another YouTuber. What's Wes's last name? Is it Watson?
Watson.
Wes Watson, yeah.
Yeah. And he takes a lot of pride in the fact that he was a shot caller. He was in charge. But hypothetical Woody doesn't want to be a shot caller. That's a lot of attention. And I don't think shot callers have a really great track record of an easy time, right? At some point, someone... Is it good to be the shot caller? It seems like a bad strategy.
If you're a big, tough guy and you can handle yourself, there are perks. And respect to Wes Watson, he's blown up on YouTube. He's doing really good. My co-defendant, Wildman, loves watching his videos. Every time I go to his house, he's got a Wes Watson video on. I think they're going to end up doing a Skype. I'm training Wildman right now in Skypes. He's not quite there yet. So Wildman arrives at a prison. He's just been sentenced. And they come up to him and they say, "What are your charges?" And he says, "I've had a long day. I'm going to sleep." And they're saying, "No, you don't understand who we are. You need to tell us what your charges are." So he knocks the guy out and he goes to sleep.
I'm going to go with assault.
They say to him, "You shouldn't have done that. We're going to find out who you are." And Wildman's like, "Okay, find out who I am." As he sleep, and he wakes up, and they come back and they say to him, "You, we know who you are now. Do you want the guy's job who you knocked out?" we need you to apologize to him, but we're going to give you his job. And Wildman, he's done lots of videos on my channel. There's a Wildman playlist about him running the building. He's got to keep the youngsters under control. And he's running he's making hooch. He's controlling the gambling. And there are a lot of perks in prison to doing that stuff if
Hooch
you've
is
got no
alcohol,
money
right?
whatsoever. Everybody's got to get the hustle on one way or another. So Wes Watson, if that was his hustle, so be it.
Wow. Well, I mean, at least there's a lot of upward mobility for careers. Beats the shit out of that guy, and it's like, you know what? Was there like an offer of pay, or like, hey, we'll give you drugs to do? I assume like most of the payment was like you get your heroin or you get your coke or whatever.
So if Wildman is manufacturing hooch, he gets to keep a percentage of the hooch. If he's running the gambling tables, he gets to keep a percentage of the take.
Okay. Now, what if your charges aren't that good, right? Like, you're not a chomo, but you're maybe like a big-time tax evader. Do they, like, give you an extra hard time? Like, tax evasion, you're kind of pussy prisoner. Like, how do they judge you on that?
They're probably going to go to Club Fed. So the federal system has got more money because it's backed by the US federal government. Now, there are some crazy federal prisons, but there's also the Club Feds, the luxury ones where the politicians go to and stuff like that. The state systems have got no money. And they're the dregs, and it's just like they just treat you like you're absolute shit in there. And
I spent a very short amount of time in a federal prison. Not one eyeball was plucked while I was there.
Not a single one.
Not a single one.
You said the states have no money.
Oh, go ahead.
Is it that the states have no money, or that a chunk of that goes towards profit?
The states don't spend hardly anything compared to the feds on the prison conditions. They probably just pocket it. That's what they do. I mean, they have huge budgets. Arizona's got a massive budget for prisons. I think education's like 20th, and prisons is like 3rd on the list. So someone's taking that money somewhere along the way. But by warehousing prisoners, feeding them food that you can barely eat, and having 2 guards watching a couple hundred prisoners, that's how they maximize the profits. And that's why there are escapes. In Arizona, they were so cheap, they hadn't fixed the alarm. It had gone off falsely like 200 times approximately in 1 month. So when some prisoners did escape, the guards were like, all right, it's just going off again falsely. And those prisoners went on a murder spree, and people can look that up. It's online about the Arizona prison escape, alarm going off, guards ignored it, and people got killed.
Wow. So just curious, in pop culture, whether it's movies, TV shows, I'm sure they get prison, all bits of it wrong all the time. But is there a show or something out there that you watched about prison? You're like, holy shit, this one feels way more real than the rest. Or none of them are hitting the mark.
So there are some silly ones, but there are some good ones as well. None of them are 100%. I think Prophet was a French film. It was really gritty and depressing. portrayed it well. There's a movie called Shot Caller, and there's a finance guy. He runs a red light with his woman and his friend and her wife, and his friend dies, and he's had too much to drink, so he gets sent down. Now, when he goes in with the new arrivals in the night, there's this skinny black guy walks in, and he's looking down, really nervous, not giving off the right body language. That guy gets gang raped in the night. So the finance guy's like, shit, the AB guys have been checking him out, and they think he's a lame. So when he gets challenged the next day, he just starts throwing punches. He's like, I'm not going to lay down for nobody, and that happened to me. And then the gang start to see his potential. They have him carrying drugs, carrying knives, putting in more and more work. But then he gets so much time. Well, I don't want to spoil it, but, basically he just makes the situation way worse for himself. And that movie answers one of the questions you asked earlier about, shot callers. They can get the hustle on and make things out of it, but also they can get a hell of a lot more time added on. They may never even get out.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a good movie. I saw that a while back.
I saw it too.
I need to check that out.
They caused a race riot, and they ended up getting moved. So that threat went away. But the race riot story is quite mental if you want to hear that.
Yes, absolutely. I'd love the lead up, the action, and the post-log. Yeah.
So as I mentioned, there were the 4 major racial categories. And the head of the blacks, I have to change names for legal reasons. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I use a name that's a different name for the same story, and people have called me out on that. But when you're publishing books, legal departments go over them and they make you change your name. So I'll call the head of the blacks Smackdown. And he was a boxer, and he had never lost a fight. And he was bullying members of all races for commissary. He came in my cell and he tried to bully a Snickers bar out of me. And I was like, look, can't eat the food in here. That's like a meal for me. If I give you that now, I'm not going to have a meal today. So he was sweating me, and he ended up going away. But he did sweat people and get stuff out of them. So all the heads of every racial category except for the blacks got together, and they said, we've got to do something about Smackdown. Well, if we have one guy say to him, look, one-on-one in the cell under the stairs, because he's such a trained fighter, he's going to win. And that gives him his right to stay then, because he's won the beef. Mm-hmm. So what we'll do is we'll send a torpedo in from each race. Now, a torpedo is someone who's just going to go in, no questions asked, do whatever the head of the race says to earn his stripes. So you've got a Mexican national torpedo who was called Diablo. You've got a Chicano torpedo. I can't remember his name. And then you've got a Wood torpedo who my crew knew, and Wildman knew this guy. He was like some tough cowboy guy out in Nebraska or somewhere like that. And they also say, right, we're going to send 3 in, and we're going to have 3 more outside the cell, just in case, in case it goes bad for the first 3.
Is this guy big or just skilled? Like, is he a 130, 150-pound champion or like a 210-pound champion? Like, how big is this guy?
He wasn't as big as my mate T-Bone, but we can get to him later on. He was like John Coffey out of that movie, that Stephen King movie. Yeah. He was a decent-sized guy.
Balls.
So the blacks are downstairs. The day room in Towers Jail, it's got these octagonal silver tables bolted to the floor. Then there's a metal grid stairs running up to 2 tiers of cells facing the front. Now, there's 4 pods exactly the same like that in this tower, and in the middle of the tower is a glass bubble raised up with 2 guards overwatching the 4 separate pods. So, in the day room of this, the pod was designed for 15 men. They're triple bunk. They've got 45 guys in there. So in the day room, you've got the blacks on the table doing the gambling, cards, dominoes, whatever it was. And Smackdown is up in his cell. The heads of the races, they give the green light. So it goes off upstairs. The 3 guys go in. You got more guys outside on the stairs guarding the position, and you got the blacks now downstairs, starting to notice that something's kicking off. All of a sudden, then the whole pod just starts fighting. People are picking up mops and brooms and doing ninja moves, and the guard on duty, he was a really tough guy. He was supposed to wait for backup in a riot situation. He put on a spacesuit. He grabs a fire extinguisher sized canister of chemical spray, and he's working his way down now from the fishbowl, the bubble. It's like a spiral stairs. So he's going to come out at the base of the tower, open the sliding door, and come in and spray everybody. And he's kind of come in right behind me. I was on the phone with my girlfriend. They cut the phone line. I'm trying to get up the stairs. This huge black guy comes down the stairs like a bowling ball, knocks everybody over. It's crazy. People are battling for positions on the stairs. I'm trying to elbow my way just back to my cell. The guard comes in. He starts spraying. When you spray that stuff, snot just streams and your eyes just water.
Mm-hmm.
And people did disperse. I managed to get back to my cell. I've got a cellmate called Troll, and I've got another cellmate who's an old-timer. And the old-timer says, look, when that chemical spray gets released, what you got to do is you got to wet your towel, wrap it around your head, and keep blinking and blinking and blinking over and over again. And that washes the chemical out, which is what I did. Now, the guards come in, the backup guards, everyone's in the cells, but we can still hear fighting. So I'm getting curious now. I want to look out my towel, out my plexiglass window. And what had happened was the torpedoes, 2 of them had managed to get out of SmackDown's cell, but the white torpedo was still in there. And they were just opening up with the chemical spray, and they were fighting blind. Now, what I later learned was when the cowboy went into SmackDown's cell with the 2 other torpedoes, he snuck behind him, and he got behind him, and he managed to get him into a headlock. But because SmackDown was a trained fighter, he pushed the guy back against the wall, tilted his head forward, flicked it back violently, and instantly broke the cowboy's nose.
Mm-hmm.
The cowboy's holding on to his neck, and the other guys are just punching the shit out of SmackDown. But he was so tough, it wasn't really having much of an effect. So when the spraying began, the 2 torpedoes, they got out, but the cowboy didn't get out in time. And now you've got this fight of the blind men until that stopped. Now, when that did eventually stop, the cowboy comes out first, and his nose is pointing in the wrong direction. And he says, in his polite cowboy twang to the guards, he says, "Before you handcuff me, do you mind if I put my nose back in place?" And they're just looking at him like he's crazy. So the guard nods, and he just gets his hand and just puts his nose back in place. Yeah. So they take him away, because if you're in a fight like that, you're going to go straight to lockdown and the punishment block. They take him out. Then they bring SmackDown out. SmackDown looks completely uninjured.
Oh no!
And he just turns around to the whole pod as the guards are escorting him out, and he goes, "For that 3-on-1 bullshit, I'm gonna have all y'all when I get out of
Did he?
SmackDown sounds cool.
Did SmackDown cool off maybe while he was in solitary, or how did that work out?
I think that he ended up just permanently locked down, because he'd been in so many fights and so many.
SmackDown and Cowboy could have ruled the block together. Probably not.
Like Batman and
Rules-
Robin,
rules of
they're
racial
not
division.
parallel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds if I watch enough Wes Watson videos, his real crime was bullying outside his race, right? You're supposed to keep that stuff in your own race, right? Wrong?
That's why they greenlit him to have him attacked.
Yeah,
Absolutely. He was violating the rules, yeah.
So you
So
have to
by
do fine in
rule of
prison.
that,
I know
you
the
just
rules.
mean like if you're gonna fuck with someone and you're in the Aryan gang, not like the head honcho guy, you fuck with other Aryans. You don't go mess with the cholos
Okay.
or whatever you said the other
Okay,
day.
the deal is this. They want to keep the drugs business running. They want harmony to an extent. Now, if two black guys have got a beef, go under the stairs, squash the beef. Two white guys have got a beef, go under the stairs, squash the beef. Black guy and white guy, same thing, go under the stairs, squash the beef. They don't want it igniting into a race riot. If you've got issues within your race, you go to your head, and the head makes the decision according to the convict code. So what was happening was multiple people who were getting bullied by SmackDown were going to their individual heads and saying, look, this guy's doing this to me. This guy's doing that to me. It's going against, the racial conduct. Is something going to happen about this guy? And so many people went to so many heads that the heads got together and they decided to end it by sending the 3 torpedoes in.
Okay. You mentioned just then the convict code. Now I'm sure you've gone over some of that, a lot of rules thus far just in this conversation. What's some of those kind of or bits of that code that those of us who've never been to maximum security prison would have no idea or maybe not expect?
So you guys are probably hip to a lot of it already. Like snitches get stitches, sex offenders, the chomos, they're going to get stabbed up, KOS, kill on sight. Some offenses are SOS, smash on sight. So, for example, drive-by shootings. If a woman and kids get hit, especially in drive-by shootings, that happens a lot. They don't like that at all. The gang members, the heads. So you're going to get a beat down at least for a drive-by shooting. If you know a guard from the streets, maybe you went to the same school, you knew a guard from something, keep it to yourself because that will get exploited. If you start chatting to the guard, you're through because they're going to think you're snitching or you're grassing, you're grassing someone out. In England, they say grass means snitch. I know a lot of Americans don't understand that. Grassing someone out means snitching someone. So showering, bad hygiene. The guy who was in the shootout, the drive-by, who the girl's nipple had come off, that guy, like I said, he was this huge guy, like 300 pounds, and he was sweating constantly, and it was stinking a bit. So the gang, the Chicanos, got together and had a meeting about him, a hygiene meeting. And they were either going to beat him up and make him roll up, just end the problem right there. But they allowed him to stay on the grounds that he had a shower every couple of hours and coated his skin in baby powder after every shower.
So
I think I must have spelled ripe every couple hours.
They had to have a meeting to deal with
Man, this is
spelling.
fucking getting gross, man.
So we know you can't snitch, right? Can you get away with dry snitching? Like, so I watch these prison YouTube video genres, right? And an example of dry snitching, right? Maybe you beat me up, and then I'm all bruised and marked up. I go to the cafeteria and eat, right? That's my way of letting people know that shit went down, and maybe that's a way of telling on you without ever doing it. Do people get away with dry snitching at all, or is that stuff?
I'll give you a story from Two Tony's book. So Two Tony's, he was in decades before me, in the 70s and the 80s. And there was a young prisoner that he was talking to regularly and he became friends with. And the guy only had a year left. He was going to get released. But the guy idolized the Aryan Brotherhood. He was rising up and he wanted to earn his stripes. So they gave him a piece of metal and they said, do a number on this guy and you'll be a full patched in member. And he dropped the metal, where the guards could see it, and didn't do the hit. And the two Tonys went to the shot caller and said, he's only got a year left, blah blah blah. And the guy said, "We got to make an example. It's a done deal. Back away." And two Tonys knew then if he backed this guy up anymore, he would be hit next. So he backed away. And he said he was on the rec yard, and he just talked to the kid. And the kid said, "Well, hey, fix me up with the fellas. I'm going to go and walk the yard with this guy." And the guy was, the guy who was the shot caller, who had already put the green light. And Tony saw the torpedoes, the probates digging up the shanks on the rec field. And the guy's got his arm around, like the youngster telling him, "You're going to be all right." And then they just come up and did the hit. And he said, yeah, and it really affected two Tonys. And he said, it made him want to help people later on in his life. Two Tonys was released from that sentence. And the guy who was responsible for that hit, he ends up showing up at Two Tonys' house when he got released. And Two Tonys helped him out because they were all clicked up, these Aryan Brotherhood guys. But then the guy started to take over Two Tonys' house. He moved the crystal meth chemist in. And Two Tonys knew this guy was going to kill him. So Two Tonys said, "Look, let's go and do this robbery in Flagstaff," I think it was. And he's driving up there with them, and he knows, they've got a gun and they're going to take him out. Two Tonys gets out of the car at a gas station, just turns around at the window and just fucking shoots the guy and kills him. So he did kill the guy eventually.
Wow.
So
yeah,
they put a hit on that young guy with only a year left.
Yeah.
I'm naively still hoping a hit means he got like a black eye.
No, he's dead.
He's dead. Yeah. He's dead, huh?
Shanked in the femoral artery and shanked in the chest plate.
And he didn't survive that.
That's the quickest way to go. They'll get your heart and they'll get your femoral artery. Because I've got a video on my channel of an Aryan Brotherhood gang member murdering another prisoner who had refused to beat someone up for the gang. And he doesn't have access to a shank or anything. And bear in mind, this is the Maricopa County Jail's security camera. The guard is supposed to be watching this, stopping any trouble. So what happens is the prisoner goes back to his cell. Everything seems fine with the gang members. The shot caller, what was his name? Van Winkle or something. He walks up the stairs, goes in the cell. A fight ensues. And then for 10 minutes, he just starts smashing this guy's head over and over and over into the concrete. And he keeps looking at the guard's camera like, what the fuck? So the guard still responded 10 minutes in, and then he just starts stomping on the guy's head and neck. And
the guards did that.
No, the guard, the murderer.
Oh, okay.
So 20 minutes in, the guy's dead. God still haven't responded.
Jesus Christ.
He picks the corpse up, brings it out of the cell, right in front of the camera like he's trying to show it off. Tries to throw it off a balcony. It gets stuck in the railing. The guards still don't come. So he just starts kicking it and kicking it and kicking it and kicking it. And then eventually they come in.
He claimed it.
Because of the smell.
Yeah, when he started rotting and decomposing.
This shows how much control the gangs have got over the prisoners versus the guards. The gangs are in complete control.
So
yeah, it sounds like it.
I don't know if you know. Kyle did 2 months in a minimum security thing, and he explained guard motivation. He said the guards really, really cared about the count. Right? That was their big thing. All the prisoners need to stay in prison. Outside of that, everything was, they barely gave a fuck. They didn't care too much if prisoners hurt each other. They didn't care too much if prisoners needed to be where they were supposed to be during the count. And outside of that, no one cared. Is that your experience at these more intense prisons?
Yeah, the guards would have prisoners fight and make bets on who was going to win. And that race riot situation, the head of the whites was this guy called Gravedigger. He was like a cage fighter, 6 foot something. He had like the devil as a puppet master on his chest. And there was a guard who just used to love watching him fight. And he'd have guys like pinned down on the floor, and he'd be using his elbows as chisels, just one after the other, into the person's face until they were just in like a bubbling pool of blood. And the guard would loved it. He would just be watching it.
I'd like
Yeah,
that too.
so
That's pretty cool.
don't fuck with the count though. Fuck with the count, and you are through, man.
Did the guards ever use the other So I used to know a couple prison guards, and they used the inmates to discipline each other. You know, that people would get raped, and they're laughing as they tell me the stories and clapping to imitate the sound of the rape. And I'm horrified at this, right? Some guy is getting raped, and they're thinking it's a funny way to discipline a guy who's been a pain in their ass.
Well, like I said earlier, even guards who have well-meaning intentions, within 6 months, the evil, negative environment, that energy has absorbed them, and they become stone cold at first, but then there becomes this us versus them mentality where, you know, both sides are trying to get over on each other, and both sides have got equally insidious senses of humor when it comes to bad things happening to the other side. So yeah, guards might be like that, but you know, prisoners equally would make jokes about the guards. And if a prisoner intervened in a situation, let's say a female guard was getting attacked or something like that, it could go either way, you know, depending on who the shot caller is. If you've intervened on a female guard's side, then you're a sellout, and you're going to get greenlit. Or, you know, you protecting a woman from potentially getting raped, preventing a sex offense.
Right?
Depends who the shot caller is.
It's like, are you for sex offense or against? Because you're kind of getting mixed messages here from some of these shot callers. Right, both.
Depends who the shot caller is.
Yeah.
Raping Steve's in charge this week, though. So
here's the in regular life in America, it's pretty uncommon for a policeman to be intimidated by a bad guy, right? You know, out here, they have complete authority, and if they don't, they just bring more and more and more cops until they get complete authority and overwhelm, and then bad guys don't get to push around cops. What about prison? Do prisoners push around guards? Do guards ever feel like they need to get in line, or they'll, I don't know, hurt their family?
Okay, what pushes around people from every profession to do with the police and prisons
what was that for? Did you
and
say
the courts?
Pushes around?
What pushes them around is money. And I'm talking the money from the black market in drugs. By keeping drugs illegal, a black market, they estimate it's almost $1 trillion a year. So some of that money is going to corrupt prosecutors, going to corrupt police, going to corrupt judges, going to corrupt guards. And that's what we see happen. Yeah.
Oh, so they're not necessarily intimidated that this Aryan Brotherhood could maybe, I don't know, hurt their kid who goes to school or their wife at home.
Oh, yeah.
They are. That's part of it, too.
Yeah, they find out where guards live and drink, and they send women to seduce them to bring the drugs in.
So they'll get them to cheat or just do something that'll hurt their home life. And then they'll
find a weakness and they'll exploit it. Yeah, yeah.
So I wanted to ask Sean, what, like you kind of got forced out of the Epstein thing, and that was your bread and butter for a while. What's kind of your new area or areas of focus that you're looking into now to expose or learn more about?
So I've just been expanding my true crime podcast. I've got like 3 or 4 co-hosts come in now, so we can keep the momentum going. We got about 3 videos a day coming out. We have a morning video, which is more cerebral, and then in the evening we have a darker video. And on the subject of things that don't exist, the people attacking my story and reputation said that a guy I served time in prison with didn't exist, and he was called Cheebone. Now, in the last interview, I mentioned to you guys that there was a riot over that guy. What would we call him? Smackdown or Knockout or something.
So,
it was
some
the
cool
race.
name, yeah.
It was the race riot. And you guys, said, was he like one of the toughest guys you had seen in there?
Right.
When I saw T-Bone walk across the prison yard, it was like something out of a Conan movie. Yeah. This guy was 6.5 foot, black guy, and just, his biceps bigger than my head, basically. So because of the rules of racial division, I wouldn't have just gone up and talked to him on the yard.
Mm-hmm.
But there was an unusual situation whereby, I had my blog and the prisoners had found out about it by now. There's a big story about how I started my blog, which I could get into later on, and how I almost got killed over my blog, which I could get into later on. But it just got in the news, and some of the prisoners had found out. Prisoners don't have internet, but their family members give them a heads up. So I'm just in my cell one day, writing at my little stool combination table thing bolted to the wall, and all of a sudden the sun blacks out. This guy T-Bone has just entered my doorway. So I turn around, I'm like, holy shit, is this guy going to sweat me? What the hell does he want? I'm absolutely shitting myself. My heart's going dun 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 dun. Anyway, I'm like, what's up? And he's like, he starts asking me about England and English history. He says he's fascinated by the Romans.
Fascinated by the Romans.
By the Romans, and he wants to go to England and visits Hadrian's Wall. And all he does is
this guy sounds cool as shit. He is cool as shit.
All he does is read military history books. So he was a former U.S. Marine. He'd seen action, and when he stood in my doorway, he just had his trousers on, his entire body covered in scars, not weenie scars, like horseshoe-sized scars, and every single one was a different life and death prison fight story. He was the ultimate prison gladiator, but not only was he standing up for himself, he was stopping the raping of the young people. And I've got my complete journey. Well, most of my journey through the jail and the prison was documented in an online blog called John's Jail Journal, JONS, which started back in 2004. It's still there if anyone wants to check it out and read it. So I've got a lot of my blog entries in front of me to remind me of the stories that I've not told you guys yet, because I did re-listen to the podcast. I've picked out some particularly hard-hitting ones, but T-Bone, the first conversation with him, I put that online, and I'm going to read you what he told me about, a little bit about himself and about prison rape. So this was back in 2006, 2007, I think. So I said to him, how much prison time have you done? 18 years since 1986. How many riots have you been through? 4 big ones. I saw people losing their lives, heads getting bust open with weights, pipes, baseball bats, picks, shovels, people getting shanked in their eyes. How did it feel to be in those riots? You got to do what you got to do. You got to get down. It's hard for me to explain to people outside of prison the effect of a prisoner calling another prisoner a punk. If someone calls you a punk, how does it make you feel? Right away, I'm thinking of death. I'm not going to go berserk. I'm going to wait and catch the person alone. The cops won't see it, but I'll deal with it. How? It depends on who's saying it. If someone calls me a punk, that's like saying I'm a piece of nothing. I'm subhuman. I have no honor or self-respect, that I need to be killed. In prison, you have 2 things, yourself and your word. Certain words are worse than raping someone. If someone calls me a punk, I'm going to handle my business. Whites, Mexican-Americans, and Mexicans make up most of the prison population in Arizona, so you must have experienced a lot of racism. In Arizona, blacks are always at the bottom of the totem pole. I've experienced pure hatred because of the color of my skin. People seething with vile contempt and hate, looking at me like they want to kill me because I'm black. But I'm wearing the same prison clothes, doing the same time. How cheap is life in prison? It means nothing. I've known people killed for as little as $40 worth of heroin. You must have lost count of the fights you've seen. I've seen so many people get annihilated, it's unreal. I've seen cops get stabbed, one in the eye. You must get sick of it. The raping annoys me the most. It's the foulest thing for a man to do to another man. Back in the day at the walls, every single night someone was getting brutalized. You could hear male flesh pounding male flesh, and nobody stopped it. You couldn't snitch, and if you couldn't fight back, you were game. Some of the rapers were the size of apes. They'd squeeze the back of the victim's neck to put them unconscious. There was a smell on the run from so many dudes getting raped. Regular dudes, not homosexuals, getting brutalized, punked, scared to admit they were getting raped. You'd also see big dudes kissing little white boys like they were women, kissing them on the lips and neck. Then all night long, you'd hear the men getting raped. I said, what a nightmare. Worse, gang members would hold someone down and stick things inside him. Things? Yes, cans, soda bottles, shampoo bottles, broom handles, and metal shanks. I've got a lot more to say about T-Bone, but I'll get your thoughts. I'll get your thoughts on that.
I mean,
did anyone else pick which one? Like, I think broom handles is my object of choice amongst that
never had an
list.
issue with that before.
If you're gonna have to pick one of those, you went with the broom handle over the sharpened
yes, I did. And the
handle?
shampoo bottles got a lot of girth, if I understand it right.
Yeah, so at least you get some good out of it, but it's that shit's vile. I mean, not T-Bone, he sounds awesome. I like him a lot, but I also liked the way you asked him about like a specific thing, and he was like, I've seen a lot of people get their head caved in, and then like that's a specific injury. And so the answer to that should be like, yeah, the jail, they brought in a 15-pound kettlebell for us so we could work our posterior chains, fight off the rapes, and and somebody caught one in the head, crushed his skull. But he didn't just say that. He was like, weights, a really big light bulb at one point, trays, leg of a chair, that guy with the big hands. You see him on YouTube.
Leg of lamb.
Came in. Yeah, leg of lamb. And so it's like, okay, that's like 7 different instances of this guy seeing a head caved in with like 7 different objects, and that was just top of the head what he could remember that morning. So that's wild. That is a horrible life to lead. But it seems like he was trying to like. And I'm editorializing a lot, but it seems like he was like, if I'm going to be here, I was a Marine. I was someone who tried to fight for the good. Well, I'll use my body here to try and like protect the weak and the rapeable.
So what did T-Bone do? Why was he in prison?
All right. So the T-Bone crime story then.
People, so he's a little bit of a hypocrite.
when T-Bone got out of the Marines and he saw action in the Marines and he had PTSD from it, he became a bodyguard, and he was in the gangster lifestyle, the night lifestyle, gets on the cocaine, and all of his crimes. And he must that was back 2006, 2007. He's back in prison now. He must be at 30 plus years right now of incarceration, all revolving around drugs lifestyle, crimes to finance drugs, that kind of activity. Now, sadly, T-Bone did get released about 5 or 6 years ago. And I was on the phone with him every week trying to get his life story down as a book because I thought that would give him credibility to do talks. He's very religious. He wanted to do talks in churches, in schools, and his heart he's got this massive heart, obviously from protecting these young people he didn't even know from prison rapists. Yeah. In this cutthroat environment, he's got this massive heart. But I knew
a massive heart from the cocaine.
Maybe enlarged. Yes, that's what happens. So I knew I was in a race against time because he's institutionalized. The prison industries feed off people like him. They have special cops watching him, trying to get him back in the system. We discussed that last time, the economics of it, $60,000 a year of taxpayers' money when they rearrest you back to the prison. So they swatted him. His neighbor, who was an old lady, they had a shotgun to her head. They were screaming at her, how do you know this guy and all this shit? And then they get him incarcerated and they say to him, look, you've done a robbery. We're going to give you 200 years if you go to trial and lose. But just sign this plea bargain right here and we'll just give you a little 15-year sentence. Now, T-Bone hadn't done this robbery. This is how they squeeze you into the system without a trial because it costs them money to give you a trial. They think you will be so scared of facing 200 years by rolling the dice at trial, especially if you're a black man in Arizona. That's a very risky proposition. They think you will be so scared of that, you'll just sign for 15 years for something you've not done. So he went and prayed, and he came back, and he said, look, I've prayed. I've decided not to do it. God's got my back. I'm going to go to trial. I'm not going to accept responsibility for something I've not done. So he went to trial, and they got the cop on the stand. And they said to the cop, "Is this the location where he did the robbery?" "Yep." "Was there a camera where in this location?" "Yep." "Show us the video of him doing the robbery." The cop said, "We didn't have time to get the video." So the jury was like, WTF is going on here? And they found him not guilty. And he was so happy. He thought he was getting out. But once the system has got you, it has got you. So there was a woman in trouble with the cops. They reduced her charges or whatever, gave her a pass to say that T-Bone took $20 off a countertop in a store. She got on the stand and said that. And she was believed over the big bad black man. And T-Bone was found guilty, and they gave him 13 years.
For $20?
Yeah, because of his prior convictions, they enhanced it.
Jesus Christ, that's horrific.
Isn't it?
Was there any
absolute abomination?
And there was no even evidence that he even took the 20 other than this woman
Nothing.
saying.
They don't need a shred of evidence.
That's pretty scary. It's one of those things I imagine you don't realize how scary it is until you're in the mix and you're like, oh, I forget. Yeah, I'm being arrested. I'm the side with no institutional power, no outreach. Like, they can just bend me over and fuck. I could be 100% innocent. Like,
there are people who sign plea bargains for stuff they've not done just so they can get a short sentence so they can get out the next day. If you watch that documentary on Netflix, the Khalif Browder story, they said he stole a backpack. He was in Rikers Island. He was getting brutalized. They said, "We'll let you out tomorrow. Just sign guilt." And he said, "No, I've not stole it." And he stayed in there and he got even more brutalized, and it's horrible what happens to him. But he could have got out, but he had integrity. So, yeah, it's a really messed up system. But T-Bone was helping these young people, preventing the raping of them in this cutthroat environment. And rape is so common out there. We had to go to a prison rape class to get taught how not to get raped. Did I tell you about that last time?
I don't think so. I could use this information.
Yeah.
All right, prison rape class, right? So we get this like a little slip under our door saying, you got to go to the rape class today at such and such a time. The guards come and all the prisoners are joking.
Here's how you want to enjoy your rape the most.
Pass the Vaseline back.
A couple of tips and tricks to enjoy.
How to prevent rape. Well, it's not rape if you consent. End of class.
This is the conversation on the way to the rape class. You just guessed it. They're saying, are they going to give us rape kits and all this kind of shit? Just joking. And then, we get to the rape class and they got this big, badass, like sheriff-looking guy with a canary cowboy hat on in there, who's one of the guards. He's a high-up guard, and he's showing us the video. And so you got predators in a day room on the video, and the new arrivals are hungry, and if they take food from the predators are going to come up to them and say, "You got to pay for that food now. Else you're going to get stabbed up." Mm-hmm. "Well, how am I going to pay for that food? I've got no money." "Well, go in that cell over there and do whatever that guy tells you to do." Now, once they fall for that, if they do that, then it's called getting turned out or becoming a prison punk, and there's no coming back for it, and they're rented out as prison prostitutes. And the conclusion of the rape class was, to stop rape, you've got to report it. And I think we went over all the gang rules last time from the Aryan Brotherhood when you go in, what they told me. You can't speak to the guards about anything, or it's KOS for snitching.
Yeah.
So T-Bone wasn't just knocking these rapists out. He's getting stabbed, hit in the head with river rocks in socks, 2 or 3 of them at a time. There's all kinds of stories he told me that I wrote down. I'm eventually going to put his book out because he has that. They talk about having the heart of a mountain lion. Fucking hell, man.
Did you learn anything in your rape class where you're like, "Oh, good, I didn't know that"? Or was it...
Good teacher.
They said if someone puts like sweets under your bed sheets, don't take the candy.
I learned about that the hard way as a child.
Well, from the Xena story last time with the broomstick in her posterior, she did survive that, but other prisoners that she knew had there was one, they put the light bulb in his posterior and made bets on who was going to smash it. That prisoner didn't survive that day. He killed himself afterwards. But Xena told me a lot of stories of people getting gang raped. And for T-Bone to be doing that, honestly, bravest man in the world. brave, absolute fucking brilliant
Yeah,
person.
they should make a
Yeah,
an HBO miniseries about him.
they should.
Yeah,
They should.
it'd be like Oz, but less horrible.
Yes.
Not that Oz was
so
a horrible
horrible.
show, but it is
It's a
discouraging to watch.
I hate
Yeah.
Oz.
It makes you like sad to watch it, but it's entertaining.
No,
It is a good show. Oh, come on.
I regret watching it. It's a terrible show.
It was the timing. You might like it more if you didn't have it.
You were about to go to
hanging
jail.
over your head.
Who would watch it again? How could I watch it again? It was awful. It was so depressing. Just nothing but death. And every time you think that like, oh, something good's gonna happen, so and so is gonna get out of prison. No, they're gonna frame him up good now.
Oh, this guy's, who we've been rooting for has finally figured it out. Got the upper hand. Now he knows what the score is. Nope. That was a fake relationship, and now he's in trouble.
Yeah, it's awful. I hated that show. And it wasn't a good time to watch it right before going to prison either. Probably poor timing. Poor timing on my part. So you think you're gonna do a whole book about T-Bone? Like how does the T-Bone story like progress from there? Like
Yeah, I mean, so he was in prison back in the day when I think 60 Minutes did a program when I was on a prison saying it was the most dangerous. This was Florence prison. It was the most dangerous square mile of real estate in the entire country back then. It was so brutal. I mean, the guards would just take you out to the desert, shoot you in the head, and bury you if they didn't like you. Things like that. Everyone was housed together in this one prison. It wasn't all industrialized and spread out like it is now. So without the cameras and everything else, the brutality was just completely off the scale. So over a period of years, I documented my conversations with T-Bone. But the total documentation story begins back in 2004. I'm in the maximum security Madison Street Jail run by Sheriff Joe Arpaio. My first year, I was in Towers Jail. The prosecutor's doing all these dirty tricks on me. She doubled my bail bond, doubled my charges. I was facing 200 years at this point. They stopped my girlfriend from visiting me by indicting her as well for prescription pills found in her house on the day of the raid. And when I moved into max security, that was when I moved in with the cockroaches. And I started to write all that stuff down and send it in home in letters to my family members. And they suggested we start a blog because blogging was relatively new back then. And there was a blogger out of Baghdad, I think his name was Salem Pax. And he started blogging, when the bombs were falling on Baghdad, and it was making the news in the UK. So my family, we had a chat about documenting the stuff that was going on in the jail. My mum didn't want us to do it because of all the murders that were going on in the jail by the guards. People like Scott Norberg, mentally ill man wandering the neighborhood. I think I mentioned him last time. They beat the shit out of him. They were still beating the shit out of him after he turned blue. And all these were caught on video, and the jail run by Sheriff Joe had to pay out over $50 million in lawsuits. So my mum was scared shitless about us exposing what was going on in this jail. But I was determined to do it because I said to a guard, "How'd you guys get away with this? The dead rats in the food, the cockroaches all over us at night time, guards murdering prisoners." And the guard said to me, "The world has no idea what's going on in here, and the public doesn't give a shit about prisoners." So with a tiny little pencil, like a golf pencil, sharpened on the cell door, I started to write everything down. Now, I couldn't put these things in the mail because the guards could open the mail, but my aunt was visiting me in maximum security. Now, in maximum security visits, she's behind like a plexiglass screen. It's like Silence of the Lambs when Clarice Starling first meets Hannibal Lecter. Yeah. I've got like leg chains on, belly chains on. I've got one hand chained to a table, and the other I'm able to hold.
Other hand full of semen. ready
I've washed that off. I've washed that off before
just like in Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah. Multiple MIGs. I can smell you. All right, so she's on the other side of the plexiglass. I'm not allowed to hand anything to my aunt either. I couldn't put what I wrote in the mail. The guards could open the mail. So what I did was I hid what I wrote in legal papers and old letters and documents I could release to my aunt through the visitation guard. So to do that, I had to put a request in. I'm penguin shuffling up to the visitation room with this pile of old letters and stuff. It's all hidden in there. So the guard takes it, puts it on his table. I'm talking to my aunt, looking over at that stuff at the corner of my eye. My heart rate is up, thinking he's going to look through it and suss out what I've written. And there's going to be consequences. But they're trained to look for contraband, syringes, drugs, cash, things like that. So he didn't check it out properly. At the end of the visit, the paperwork was handed to my aunt, and she took them home in Arizona, typed them up, emailed them to my family in England, and that's how my blog, John's Jail Journal, started. And the first stuff I wrote down was when the jail had no running water for 3 days. And I knew we were in trouble when the mound of crap in the toilet had risen above the water level.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so inmates display, remarkable ingenuity during these difficult occasions. And the solution was to shit in the plastic bags the moldy breakfast bread is served in. And then you just keep those bags in your cells until you're allowed out for a shower and put them in the trash downstairs. So that was the solution. But you had to wait on all that. And it took a long period of time to get the crap out.
And you're filling bags with shit.
What the fuck?
Yeah,
it's pretty. Although, hold on, I do like how you said that you're like, oh, these prisoners, they are ingenious in these scenarios. Their solution was to take a bag and put the shit in it, and then take it out. It's really remarkable.
So that was the first day of my writing. I was writing about that. The whole building reeked like a giant portaloo, and we're sleeping right next to the toilet. It's like living in a bathroom. Your toilet's there, your bunks are there. So we put a towel over the toilet to try and reduce the smell. Now, the next day of my writing, my cellmate, he's been holding a shit in for days because he doesn't want to do a dump when there's this big pile of crap already over the water level, but he can't hold it in any longer. So he pinches his nose, lifts the towel from the toilet and says, "There's way too much crap to crap on, dog. I'm going to use a bag."
Oh.
So as etiquette demands, I roll over on my bunk and face the wall. I hear something hit the rim of the seatless toilet and him say, "Damn, I missed some."
Is it like pissing in a bottle on a road trip where you're like, oh, I'm filling up.
So he puts the bag of crap near the cell door, which made the smell even worse in the cell, where he's got it on the fucking rim of the cell, the shit. Because we've got no running water, we can't clean that off. So that looks like a fucking crustacean on the rim.
Oh,
and
a barnacle on your.
and then we were hoping to be allowed out of the cell to dispose of the bag, but a guard announced, "We've got no running water. We're going to have to get 120 inmates water from emergency containers. So you're all staying locked down." Now, hours and hours later, the water came back on in stages. In our toilet, its level slowly rose. So I said, "Oh shit, it's about to overflow."
This is about to be a cataclysmic event.
It's about to overflow, and we're going to be stuck in here with sewage all over the floor.
Quick, what did the ingenious criminals do?
The cellmate, what he said was, "One of us needs to stick his hand in the crap to let the water through, and you're the closest, dog."
You're the closest, like in an 8 by 10 foot room. You're 9 inches closer. Hey, you're closer, man. I'm 11 inches further this way. I don't make the rules of prison. Get your hand in there.
I was a few inches closer. So I grabbed. It was too late to do anything. I grabbed the sandwich bag and I put it on my hand and I said, "I can't believe I'm doing this." I plunged my hand into the mound and the mound sucked the bag off my hand and up to my elbow in sewage. I dug until the water level sank. I'll never forget it. There was even like pieces of grapefruit peel mixed with the shit and everything. And then And then
wait a minute. Let's not gloss over that. Did some mongrel in the prison
He was eating
not know how to
peels.
properly peel a grapefruit? And they
Just some guy down there in the common area, like, man, this fruit sucks. Like, just take a big bites of rind.
As an aside to this story, though, Sheriff Joe Arpaio prided himself on feeding us the moldy food. I think we discussed it last time.
Yeah.
He was making news headlines for cleaning up grapefruits from rat-infested neighborhoods. So that had been our breakfast fruit day after day. Had been these grapefruits from the rat-infested neighborhoods.
Jesus Christ.
Now we've got no trash can, so at the inception of the water problem, we'd been throwing grapefruit peel down the toilet. And that had formed a base over the crap that had, So I'm thinking through all this, and the water did go down. My cellmate's like, I owe you one, dog. I'm like, it's your turn next time.
You owe me 5 or 7
But
things.
the combination sink water had not come back on.
Oh, no.
So I could not wash my arm.
Oh.
I sat on a stool till a guard let us out for showers. Hours later, just fucking caked in crap. Yeah.
And most of it wasn't even your crap.
They chose you because you were
It was
closest.
a blend.
That
It was
doesn't
a
seem like a
blend.
fair system. Like, were you the lowest seniority in this? Like, is there something aside from you're closest to the toilet?
No, honestly, I was just acting fast. Yeah, we just had
Okay.
to do it right away. Yeah, no.
It's
fucking
funny you
You gotta
mentioned
get shit
that.
done.
It's funny you mentioned that, like reaching in elbow deep, because I can really picture it. Because I rewatched the original Jurassic Park for the first time last night since I was a child, and when the lady's
had a
trying to
better
discover
glove.
why the Triceratops is sick, and she's reaching in. Except that was like an herbivore shit. Herbivore shit isn't half as gross. Isn't a quarter as gross as carnivore shit. Like you know, Kyle, you grew up around a bunch of cows. Cow shit is still disgusting, but there's something about, like, if you saw a pile of cow shit in a pile of human shit and you had to clean one of them up, I'd be like, yeah, I'll take this and the next 10 cow
I'll
pies
say
over
this.
the human shit.
If you step in cow shit, you're like, oh, dang, glad I wore my boots. If you step in human shit, you're like,
Yeah.
the fuck? Who shit here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The cow shit's mostly going to come off in the grass on its own because it's largely grass. Yeah.
I interviewed a prison guard. Let me just tell you a little aside story on this. So in England, they got this thing called dirty protests, and they're called shit slingers in America. I don't know if we went over all the shit slinger stories last time, but I've got a lot of shit slinger stories.
I'm sure.
So I'm including the Rambo of the shit slingers was this guy called Magnum. Oh yeah, well we could get to that. But I interviewed a prison guard on my True Crime podcast, and they said they were doing dirty protests day after day. They smeared shit all over the cell walls and everything, and they figured out a way to stop it. And the way to stop it was when they let these guys go out for recreation, instead of putting them back in their own cells, they put them in each other's cells, so they had to smell each other's shit that had been caked on the walls, and it stopped. That stopped the protest quite quickly.
That's a high
wow.
IQ solution.
Yeah,
That's a very good, because like you get let back into your own shitty room and you're like, yeah, we're protesting. But they're like, no, you're in room 2B. And it's like, oh, well, I understand Josh is also protesting, but this is disgusting. Like,
Yeah,
what is
see that,
Josh eating? How is Josh eating the same mandatory meals as me? How's he making this into that cauldron of a body?
Reminds me of Neil Samworth. if you wanna see that.
Oh, that's so awful.
Yeah.
It would be terrible.
Oh,
So, go on.
No. Go ahead. The dirty protest.
All right, yeah. So my writing started in the maximum security Madison Street jail. It was at the tail end of that visit, and I did write a blog entry. Was my final blog entry from the jail, and this one really did capture the hell on earth fucking nature of that place.
I'd love
No
to hear it.
joke.
Yeah.
All right, so 13th of July 2004, a sudden spate of tragedies has compelled me to write this entry. At the weekend, 2 inmates on my floor attempted to commit suicide. One threw himself off the balcony and survived. The other was discovered trying to hang himself. Sadder still, an inmate housed in a medium security pod was found dead in the shower. Inmates are often smashed in the shower area because it is out of view of the cameras. The jail has refused to release the cause of his death. The temperature outside is 114 degrees Fahrenheit. The trickle of earth into our cells feels like hot air blowing from a hairdryer. We are soaked in sweat all day and night. It is difficult to write on this sweat-moistened paper. The majority now have skin infections and rashes, which persistently itch. My skin is so soggy from perspiration that when I scratch it, the skin detaches, and I end up with clumps of it under my fingernails. Between the sweat trickling down my body and the cockroaches tickling my limbs, it is impossible to sleep properly. Last night, while sleeping on my side, my ear filled up with sweat, and when I moved my head, the sweat spilled onto my face. I woke up startled, feeling like someone was touching my cheek. I once asked a guard how the jail's administration got away with this, and his response was, "The world has no idea what goes on in here." When I was a small child, I imagined hell consisted of caves in which the damned were trapped, tortured, and burnt. I imagined serpents and indescribable creepy crawlies tormenting the captives. I never imagined man's nature could be so hateful as to recreate these conditions on Earth. Yeah, that was what it was like back then, as I documented it in real time.
I didn't even know your ear could fill up with sweat.
Oh,
like just like water. Just like you got out of the pool and you kept your head like that on purpose, and then it just rolled over your. That's disgusting.
well, that sounds just awful. I'm uncomfortable listening to it.
Yeah,
I can't. That's so horrible.
Everybody, the majority have skin infections now. Like,
it looked like I spilled battery acid on my leg at one point.
Really, like it was just like burning constantly,
just like open sores.
Oh. And they just don't give a shit. Like there's no sense of urgency or, I mean, and I'm sure there's like an offsetting of responsibility, right? Like the guards are like, "Oh, I'm not in charge of any of this. I don't really care. That's the management. I'm just walking around." And then the management's like, "Oh, well, they're all scumbag, rapists, murderers. Who cares? They can be sweaty."
So when I was moved over to maximum security, I did end up with a crystal meth chemist as a cellmate, and he was really good. He had my back, and he helped me with the Aryan Brotherhood, who had problems with me teaching the Mexicans. And he also taught me how to play the system. He said, if you put in a request for medical on one form, you got to beg it from the guard, get him to sign it, all this shit. It's rigmarole. If you only put in one form, it's like a lottery ticket. You got to put forms in every single day.
Yeah.
So I started putting forms in every single day about my bed sores and shit. And I did manage to get to see... I got taken out to medical and got to saw a doctor. Probably banned from public practice.
Were you having like the rest of your friends, fellow cellmates at the time, like, "Hey, we're all doing this," or was it just you were just submitting a bunch, or did you get everybody to submit?
I was asking them to get forms from the guards for me so I could submit more myself.
Oh, okay.
So I go to this doctor, and I had bleeding bed sores on my buttocks, so he told me to drop my black and white striped trousers and my pink boxer shorts and bend over, and he's looking at these bed sores, and he did give me antifungal ointment to take back to my cell. So I'm putting this antifungal ointment on my bed sores. This is months later now, when I was in a cell, I think on my own, and a guy appeared at my window. I'm half naked. This guy looks through the window and he disappears, and I got a love letter shoved under my door a few hours later, commenting on my hairy arse and proposing we have a gay prison marriage. And in fact, his exact words were, "I'm looking forward to shampooing your hairy arse on our honeymoon in San Francisco."
Oh, that's so sweet.
He's a bit of a romantic. I like this guy. Now, I know it wasn't what you were looking for, but you didn't say this is a man with bad eyesight.
Cosign.
Right?
Now, I gotta ask, was he cute?
All right, this is now my introduction to Frankie. Frankie was a Mexican mafia hitman. He showed me his paperwork, $50,000. It was his fee for murder for hire. He was in for conspiracy for murder. And he was genuinely bisexual. But he was a chess champ, and he'd heard about my chess playing skills. So he had come to my window that day to challenge me to chess. He saw me with my trousers down, bent over, putting the antifungal ointment on the bleeding bed sores on my behind. And he said it was love at first sight. So
does anyone else feel like we have to see the behind to know?
Frankie seems pretty nice so far.
Oh,
Yeah.
he did. He had my back, not my backside. He had my back for many situations.
Bispinga, yeah.
And he was coming on to me throughout many months that he was housed in areas I was housed.
Truth.
And,
A little piece of you flattered.
If you go to a gay bar and the fellas come up to you and you do feel a bit flattered.
Sure.
I'm not. There's so many homophobic people out there, and it's all nonsense, isn't it? People should just get along with everybody. And he wanted me to do naked yoga for him. He wanted me to play strip chess and all.
Not with him, for him. So so you were going to be doing yoga alone to no tape in a cell for him.
He just wanted to bang his bishop while watching it.
Did you say he was a chess grandmaster and now he wants to play
probably not a
chess?
grandmaster.
There's a lot of guys in prison who become chess champions, but they have no way to measure it really. But put it this way, I was in a chess club when I was a kid. I was beating the adults. And my chess thing rekindled in jail, and I was the champion up until that point. And Frankie kicked my fucking ass, and my parents had to send chess books in so that I could keep up with him. And every now and then I did overtake him with the chess books, but then he'd formulate new strategies and he'd start winning again. I had to get more chess books sent in.
That's fun.
Well, I've got a funny story about him, right, from Supermax.
Mm-hmm.
So in Supermax, you very rarely get out your cell, so they pass things through fishing lines. Now, a fishing line is, a strip of sheet or cloth or cotton or whatever. You put a weight on it like toothpaste, and you throw it under your door. And you even got people throwing them from the upper tier down to the bottom tier. You connect your end with their end, tie them together, and you can pass whatever you want from cell to cell. And I remember
from the upper to the bottom, you mean you just slide it so hard under the door that it like goes over the railing or the side?
Yeah, it goes off over the run where people can walk across. It goes under the door, over where people walk across, off the railing, and down to the bottom tier, to the floor. And I remember one time looking out my window, looking out at the area outside, and it was like poltergeist. You could see like a bag of this was moving this way, and an envelope was moving this way, a peanut butter was going this way. But anyway, Frankie, the frisky fella he got someone to hold on to one end. He tied the other end around his dick, and the person in the other cell was giving it that. Yeah.
Man. All right, wait. We made fun of the ingenuity of
the Bobby
earlier,
Fischer of prison.
Board. Yeah, now like this is ingenious.
All right, so here's the
tricking
question.
another prisoner into jacking you off is one of the funniest things I've ever heard. That's really, really good.
What did you tell him? He was operating some sort of very complex tattoo gun? Yeah, faster. Coming out real good.
Stop! It's too sensitive.
But yes, I made friends with a guy who was on the cleanup crew for the shit slingers. So the shit slingers are in Supermax. They're housed in a certain area.
I picture the shit slingers as having matching jackets. I know they don't, but I picture them having matching jackets that say SS, except it's very Nazi-esque, but they say it's for shit slingers. Yeah.
So
I see what you
everyone in the whole prison match. But carry on.
So a basic shit slinging might be then, you just get some crap or some piss, throw it on a guard, throw it on an enemy, or if you want to be a bit more productive, you could like get a chicken bone, put some crap on it, make a blowpipe, and dart the person going past your cell. And bear in mind that there's a lot of hepatitis in prison, and if you want to be more devious, you can like let the shit and piss sit for days until mold grows on it, and it's more toxic. But the Rambo of the shit slingers was a guy called Magnum, and he was really harassing the guards, getting them constantly. So shampoo bottle, tube. He had a bazooka basically where you could spray shit.
So he would like stomp on it and it would spray shit everywhere.
Yeah, this whole
Make it
cell
look worth it.
Yeah, this whole cell rigged up. This whole cell rigged up with shit.
Dude, Magnum's even cooler
appliances.
than fucking T-Bone. But what was like? I'm curious. What is like the feel towards Magnum from the other prisoners when he does stuff like that? Are they like, "You get a Magnum, that's hilarious," or is it like, "Stay away from that guy, he's gross"?
All right, because I wasn't housed on the Shitslinger Row. I only got these stories from the cleanup crew guy. So I don't know, how applauded he was by the people he was housed with.
Okay.
But the guards were having none of it. So they went in his cell. They took all of his appliances. They got him completely naked. And they handcuffed him behind his back. Like cuffs, ankle cuffs, belly cuffs, hands, everything. Completely naked. And put him in a dry cell where he had nothing whatsoever. Now, in this dry cell, there's just like a hole in the middle of the cell, which where piss can go down.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing else in the cell. But they underestimated.
Right. Did he fill his mouth? Tell me he filled his mouth.
They underestimated his resolve.
Yeah, his resolve.
So at head height is an area where the guards can open and look in on him every 20, 30 minutes. Security walk, got to check on him. So Magnum crapped on the floor of the dry cell, turned his body around so he could mouth it, and then raised his head to head height, waiting for the next guard to do a security walk, while his saliva is blending into
He's
the
brewing it. Yeah.
I feel like I have the ingenuity to be a shit slinger. All right? I
This
called
is-
it.
This
So-
is fucking disgusting.
So the guards have a protective visor, right?
Yeah.
So the guard's head pops up at the door, slat opens, Magnum's face, Magnum's mental face, he's right there. The guard sees this coming at him. The guard gets so freaked out and shocked and scared, he puts his head back like that.
Oh.
And it goes up inside the visor, up his nose and in his eyes.
Oh.
Oh.
And he probably got hep out of it.
Well, yeah, that's the gamble. Yep. So that was
That's
Magnum.
brutal. I mean, stomping on the shampoo bottle with the straw in it, though, as a form of
here's the
bazooka
problem with that,
is
though.
great.
Here's the problem with that. I can just
Genius.
imagine someone going to the warden and being like, "Do you know that they're so sweaty down there, their skin is almost coming off of them? Do you know that one of them shat on the floor the other day, mouthed it, and then waited half an hour for a guard to pass so that he could spit it into his eyes?" No, I did not know that, warden. I'm so sorry for wasting your time here today.
and like the way
I
you
have some
say,
moldy bread I'd like to donate.
the way you say the way you say he mouthed it really undersells the way that he was big. I'll say he was beginning to eat his shit. There's no way there was zero drippage in the back of the throat as he's standing there for how long do you think? 20, 30, 40, 50 an hour?
I reckon it could have been up to like 20, 25 minutes max. Yeah.
Standing there with a mouthful of shit. How many times as you're standing there in prison in the middle of the room hole cell with a mouthful of shit before you're like, when did my life go off the rails? Like, when did it become unsalvageable? That now my main thing is building up a reputation as the guy who's willing to semi-swallow the most nasty things so he can get a glancing blow off of a guy who just wants to go home and like play Madden.
Some of these people are gone. They're completely gone. They're serving forever. They're mentally gone, and they've got nothing to lose, and they just don't give a fuck.
They need
It
to
makes
give
sense.
that guy a deck of cards or something so that he'll stop pooping on them. What was his main? Like he's protesting, I suppose. That's why he is doing these horrible things. What is he protesting specifically, or is it just the prison conditions in general?
The cleanup crew guy just said to me that the shit slingers are just people who are crazy.
Oh,
They're serving life sentences. and some of them are just sat in there all day just playing with their own poo.
I love how they're I love how you phrase it like they're like their own like kind of ancillary clan in this Mad Max world where like the Aryans the Aryans and the 13 or whatever the Hispanic gang is, like they are aware of the shit slingers. They know of them, but they don't deal with them in any way. And so like if there were some sort of hero to come into this world and save things, one of the first thing he would do is he would go, we need to talk to the shit slingers, and then they would overcome their irreconcilable differences and be like, fine, you can still spit shit at people, but you have to do it in my rules. And then they would fight back against the powers that be.
Yeah,
Zach, remove the last few seconds of audio. I'm gonna reach out to Netflix. Who are you again? No, I'm telling you, it's a good idea. It's a okay. It's $2 million an episode.
The shit slingers are a law unto themselves.
Yeah,
That's
they're
why
like in 300. Do you remember the Immortals?
Yes.
Who kind of played for the Persians, but like it was also like and the Immortals. Fighting for the Persians, but mostly for themselves, like that kind of shit. Like that's what they're like. The ultimate warriors who will glom on to any sort of cause as long as they can spit shit at people.
Who are the Golden Knights? Is that who it was in Game of Thrones? They're like the Golden Army. They were
the Golden Knights are the Vegas hockey team. The Golden Army. That's the Lannisters, right?
No, so in Game of Thrones, there was like this army they were going to hire that was going to make this really big difference.
The Golden Company,
yeah. And they spent like a season and a half talking about the finance related to the Golden Company, and they folded like a house of cards, something that folds easily, and it was yet another like season 8-ism. Like, oh, I see. Yeah, they offered a good 15 seconds of
yeah, that was funny. Like seasons 5, 6, and 7, they're like the Gold Company's coming to assist, and then it's like no explanation. Some guy like, well, unfortunately, Gold Co. 501c4 folded due to insolvency, and it's like, well, fuck, man, we were hoping something would happen here.
We saw them, we met them. They just sucked. I don't know.
Yeah, there were like 11 of them. What are you gonna do? Who gives? How much money can you demand? You're eating hard bread.
He ended up locking a record amount of non-violent drug users, including women, hundreds of thousands of them, to fill the private prisons. So the hypocrisy is absolutely staggering.
At the time, there was this like culture war against these, what they call them, super predators or something like that. And the idea was that,
remember the Clinton?
That's the Hillary
it was
thing.
Hillary, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, there was this thought process that like people were going to prison, learning how to be very good prisoners, teaching each other, lifting weights, and they were coming out like jacked and scarier and better trained and becoming better prisoners. And that's 3 strikes you're out kind of got employed. And at being tough on crime was a very politically popular position to take. And all of America was lined up. I was lined up. I think I was wrong, but that's what I believed at the time.
Yeah,
because
it's easy to get most of the population lined up on stuff. Like when you look back and you realize stuff like that, it's like
for crime.
Crime. Who's for child pornography? No one's for that, but they use it to launder censorship. People who consume it aren't against it, but like they launder in internet bills in the modern day where, oh, you don't want to be tracked with your real name and shit? Well, you must want pedophiles to win. And it's like, well, no, just because you can't vote against the Child Online Protection Act without seeming like a monster, even if that act has a bunch of shit in there that's about tracking people, Yeah. So they can always launder what they want through the media.
Yeah, and the media was showing, all these crack monsters and crack babies. And also, they portray that prisoners are just pedophiles, rapists, serial killers. But when I got there, I saw the average arrest was a young person with a bit of weed getting like a 2 to 5 year sentence. And if you look at the stats, at the peak of the war on drugs, the highest arrest category was weed possession, almost 1 million arrests a year. Crazy. They go in as potheads, they become heroin addicts, they become Nazis, they've got criminal records, they don't stand a chance, their lives are ruined. They give them $50 on the door, they say, have a nice day when they're getting released, and they come right back. As soon as they come back, $60,000 of taxpayers' money to the prison by design.
a regular person of the public, I'm talking about me at that time, felt like they were in there for armed robbery. They were in there for mugging. They were in there for like, I don't know, beating up nice people who
violence.
didn't do anything.
Because that's what the news, like I remember, like the news isn't like this anymore, but I remember growing up, the news being a lot about like the 8 crimes that happened tonight.
Are you kidding? That's exactly what the news is now.
Oh,
Well,
to me, it's about politics. Maybe
I guess I watch
the
CNN.
same
I
news.
think what it is I watch cable news instead of local news now. But growing up, we had local news. I didn't have CNN growing up. I think we had the channel, but nobody knew how to dial it in. So we'd watch 4, 7, and 13 and 21 or whatever our local stations were, and you'd hear about the crimes of the night. And so like those were the people you thought of when you thought criminal. You thought the guy wearing a mask who's going to beat you up at night and rob you or break into your house or rape or murder.
Bad boys, what you going to do?
Dude,
what you going to do when they come?
You imagine the most intense, heartless killers.
Will Smith led me wrong. I watched that movie and I took it to be a historical documentary. and that is not how law is enforced.
R.I.P. Martin. Wait, who else was in that? Martin Lawrence?
Martin Lawrence. He's still alive.
Yeah. Oh, he's
not
alive?
his career, though.
Oh, well, you know what?
Tornado.
Everyone, let's all thank God that Martin Lawrence is still with us.
He's not looking great.
Okay, well, let's give a little thanks to God. Then.
And you know, usually when they do one of those like movies where like your buddy who's a star like does the sequel, so you know, they get in shape at least.
He's not in shape. Oh, he wasn't in shape in Bad Boys 2, you mean?
3, I think they just did. I think they did like Badder Boys.
They just made Bad Boys 3.
Something
Man,
like
striking
that,
while the iron is hot. With that, do most people in their 20s even know what Bad Boys is?